meeting of the Board of Education to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We'll start with roll call. Dr. Metcalf.
Mrs. Winstanley. Mr. Boucher. Here. Mrs. Mulvena.
Here.
Mrs. Clark-Pearson.
Here.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Shiflett.
Here.
President Wasik.
Here. All right, as people file in, we'll start with our first item on our agenda tonight, which is a human resources report. And I think Mr. George is going to be providing that.
Yep. I'd start.
You can go ahead and start.
Good evening. We'll get started with this report. I think. Yep. HR report deals with HR. So we talk about 86.6% of our total budget is spent on our most valuable resource. That's our staff. And if you look at that, 13.4, at least 13.4 for non-personnel expenses. And when you break that down by budget, that means $40 million is that 86.6 approximately, and $6 million is left for that 13%. So how do we keep the 13.4% on non-personnel going? Because everything goes up, energy costs, fuel costs, every part we buy for a bus, every bus we buy goes up, all those things. So we've done a lot of things. Our insurance rates go up, things like that. In the last 18 months, we've done a lot of work with all of our vendors. We've changed everything from the hand soap that you get, to paper towels, to cleaning supplies. We've locked in on some rock salt that we use for the parking lots, to all kinds of things for the non-personnel costs. So I wanted to just mention that before I get to the personnel costs, because that's what we want to do, is we want to try and keep those down so we have more revenue for our personnel. When we look at the HR planning process, every decision includes a large number of factors before we start making decisions. So as we go forward, what we want to do is we want to look at all these things. So if you look at that slide there, you know I have at least 7 more slides in front of you, because I'm going to go under each one of these collective individually. So let's start with making projections, dealing with collective bargaining agreements. Currently, as an update, we have teachers, as you well know, bargaining agreement out there we're working on. The second one is transportation. Our bus drivers settled a 2-year contract, but the second year of it, which is this coming year, is a wage reopener. So where we're at with that right now, we have been in communication with one another, and we're just setting up, working on a date for the wage reopener. And that'll go until June 30th of 2017. So I'll be giving you additional updates on that during some of our closed sessions. Our custodial maintenance, their contract is the only one that completely expires June 30th of this year. And with custodial maintenance, that's our custodians and our maintenance staff, approximately 40 individuals. And right now I'm not sure who I'm supposed to bargain with. I was told by MEA that I could only talk to them, and then I was told by custodial maintenance that I was going to talk to them. So what I said, hey, you've got to work this out. So tomorrow I have a call with Merck, scheduled conference call with Merck, to try and figure out how to proceed from here. It's my understanding that custodial maintenance no longer wants to be part of MEA, but when they separated, they didn't do it correctly, so there's some conflict there. So Merck is involved. So I'll tell you more next board meeting after my call with them. Next slide deals with how do we know where we're going to be when we look at our FTE for student count. And oftentimes what's out there is our total count, which is the right column, and you think, okay, this is what we should be projecting, making our projections on, because that's what's published, is our total student count. Well, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've been doing some different things because we wanted to keep our student count up. As you well know, that's a major source of revenue for us. And so what you see, I've broken it down into Grand Ledge FTE, Public Schools FTE. That's the left column. And then we've added a couple more columns in there. One is Shared Partnership FTE. Shared Partnership is the community kids from the community that go to St. Mike's or Our Savior Lutheran, those schools, and we provide specials teachers for them, gym, music, and art. Well, we started out in 2012, 2013 doing that, so that 32 FTE we were able to add to our total student count. Now keep in mind, then we had to hire teachers. We had an agreement with our teachers contract. We had an agreement to hire teachers for Shared Partnership under that contract, same benefits, different pay scale, and so there we started hiring specials teachers for our Shared Partnership. That stayed steady the next year, and then the following year, Eaton County Youth Facility came to us and said we'd prefer Grand Ledge take care of our, handle our education of our students at the Eaton County Youth Facility. So we worked extremely hard with them, hired 3 more teachers for them, and then we added their FTE that's part of their program. Now what this means is this is a lot more work for our pupil accounting under Mark Deschain's group, and the Deanne Gullib do a phenomenal job of this. And we have different secretaries in the district that track this through Power School, because each one of this, it's not like just having 28 FTE or 32 FTE. It's like having 1 hour of an FTE per week, per number of kids, etc. So you've got to add that all together, and it's all got to match so that we can get the appropriate state funding, and it doesn't, so that's kind of how we project that. And when we got started, we wanted to see if we were making any money doing it, and we actually had a little increased our revenue as a result of doing this as well. That's why we're doing it. You see a big jump this year, 2015-16, under Shared Partnership FTE. And the reason you see that jump is because the law changed, and in the past, all we could provide them for teachers, as far as specialist teachers, was the same curriculum and the same hours that we actually offered at Grand Ledge Public Schools. The law changed, and now we can offer them many more things. So I hired a full-time Spanish teacher, and she goes to St. Mike's every day, Our Savior, and Manual Lutheran. So she goes to 3 school districts every day and teaches Spanish. And so that added it. And let's see, Spanish, music, band, PE, and computers. Computers was a big addition here for this year as well. So now we have hired teachers to teach computers for them. So that's why you see the total FTE spent is much better than we have. On the left column, certainly I'll refer back to that and some of the estimates that we have on student FTE as well for this year. And we've talked about that a little bit with the recent presentations by our CFO, because Nancy needs to know what our projections are. And using those projections, in November we knew we had 40 more students than we anticipated, and then in her February, if you look back in her February presentation, another 32. So what you start looking at is this is a good thing, and we have more students, and it helps us out quite a bit. And you can see the increased revenue, the $220,000 increased expenses. That's the teachers that we've hired, and the $400,000 is what basically is sitting there. That's the district set aside pending negotiations. And so even at that, we're still a little bit under the water here, even with the extra teachers. So, but that's what, even with the extra students. So that's what that's looking at, and it's not taking into account a lot of the other expenses that aren't figured in here. So again, it's great, but we're doing a lot of extra things to keep our student FTE numbers where they're at. Administrator costs. Trying to figure out how do we balance, again, to keep our revenue up there, to balance our revenue, how do we keep this ship afloat? So you look at the administrator costs, and we track that each year, and what we're tracking here is now, are we keeping this in balance where we should be? And with administrator costs, you can see it's went down. Well, it hasn't went down because our administrators have taken a cut in pay, so don't want to just think that. but we have less administrators. We have one less executive director of operations, and we have one less high school principal. So there's actually less administrators now than there were, and that's the reason for the total comp change or reductions. Tim, I don't know if your battery's maybe not. Maybe I'm just not pointing at the right place. Teacher assistants also go in the classroom. There's a lot of discussion about teacher assistants. This is pretty labor intensive to keep these teacher assistants hired. Now we have teacher assistants assigned just to Grand Ledge, and then we also have teacher assistants assigned to Eaton Risa. We took them over in 2013-14, but they're not part of this program, okay? They're not on this slide because that's another revenue that we're working to bring more revenue into the district, and so they're not part of this slide. This deals with Grand Ledge teacher assistants, and we hang right around that $2 million per year at 5%. When you see a little bump up, those were years where the projection was 8% or more, the fund balance projection, and it's 8% or more. The contract, the teacher's contract, required us to have first grade TAs in classrooms, so that's about a $250,000 cost to the district. So you see a bump during that year. So you may wonder what's happened here, but again, that's where we're at for a long time. We're spending the same amount of money basically on teacher assistants. Now, I'm going to refer back to this slide later, but this is something, when you look at it, what should jump out at you is, look, 2011-12, 12% fund balance. That's audited. That's where we were. Okay, pretty solid number. Then it goes to 10, then 9, then 8, and 7. And again, when I looked at 7, let's not talk about 7 right now. Let's talk about 8. Here's what the concern is here. These are audited numbers. This tells us, this should speak volumes that each year since 2011-12, we spend more money than our revenue is. That's what this is telling you. So the projected fund balance, you can't, 15 months ago, 14, 15 months ago, I was very, very nervous because what happened was your policy, and I want to stay employed for a while, and I know your policy is 8%, all right? And I know it should be 15, it should be 15, and most schools, a lot of schools say it's got to be 15 so we don't have to borrow so much money because I realize we borrow money to make payroll for several months before we get our aid. Well, when it gets to 5%, I also realize that that's the new zero. So then the state comes in and starts looking at the books, starts saying all these things, and it's going to create a lot more work as well for everybody here. So with that being the new zero, and I talked about 14, 15 months ago, I was pretty nervous, is what happened was Sonia came to me and she said, in February 2015, and she says, Andy, we're in trouble. I'm looking at a fund balance is going to be right around 5%. Our projected fund balance for this is last year, is going to be around 5%. And I'm saying this is not good. All right, we've got to do some things. And now we're in the middle of our budget year. How do we pull out of this? And so this is some things that we did a year ago. We froze all hiring. We froze technology, textbook, instructional support purchases. These were things that we had budgeted, okay, that we were going to do. We had budgeted, but we realized we could no longer afford them. Froze all custodial supplies, building maintenance, repairs were postponed. So now that's not helping us because we're just postponing something we have to fix, something we have to repair. And, I really get a good handle on this because of overseeing operations now. They're coming to me and saying, this is broke. How do we fix it, Andy? Where are we going to get the money? What do we do? How do we keep things going? So by doing that, again, it just postponed some things that we should have been doing a year ago. We reduced custodial maintenance workers' hours. Last summer, the way the end of school year was and the way the beginning of this school year was, there was 13 weeks, which is 1 week longer than we normally have. We normally have 12. When I got looking at that, I go, well, usually in 12 weeks, you can get all the buildings clean, you get all the maintenance done. So how can we reduce? To me, you have an extra week for custodial maintenance. So let's figure out, we're looking at some serious budget issues here. How do we do this? So well, we talked to the custodial maintenance group, and they reduced their hours all summer long. It gave them more time off, but unfortunately for them, they weren't paid. And then it will also postpone bus and vehicle purchases. On top of that, so I thought by doing those things, we're going to get through it and come around with about 7% fund balance, projected fund balance, and yet we got a very pleasant surprise from Eaton Risa. They had 2 years of year-end fund that they owed us, so it was for out-of-district payment. So we got $200,000 from them. It's a one-time.
I would like to interject something here, that when I got on that board last year in March, the superintendent at the time was saying that she didn't feel any moral obligation to make any payment to Grand Lodge. Apparently, when she left, they found their moral obligation to make that payment, but it wasn't a sure bet. They were deciding that they didn't think there was a reason to give us that money, so it was a pleasant surprise.
It was a pleasant surprise. In what we've talked about, Eaton Risa's financial issues there, and because of what happened, and she's gone, and that investigation is why we got paid. So yes, and then an additional $129,000 from state aid. So even with all that, we still spent more money than we took in, and that's again, I want to bring this up to the board. To continue to do the things we're doing, we have to do some things differently, because we cannot continue to spend more money than we take in, or we won't be here. So 6 out of 7 years it says the district has had a deficit budget and 1 year budget positive, and that was before I got here. Okay?
Just one comment on that too, that what we're discussing now is the general fund operation, right?
We're just talking about general fund.
Right. I mean, it can be, if you look at the audit, and I think people get very confused when they look at the audit. What we by law can really look at for the operation of what is the sort of the traditional part of the school is the general fund. Everything else are restricted operating revenues and fund balances and everything else for very specific reasons. So what you're looking at here is, and if you ever look at our audit, you should look at the general fund. That is where, this is where we operate out of. Just because otherwise people get twisted up in the money they think is available.
And that goes back to that first screen we talked about. This is general fund, and that 13.4%, again, that deals with all our natural gas, our energy, fuel for the buses, all those things. That is where we end up here. So, yes. I think I just have to hold it a little bit longer, Kim, is all. Okay, is this the next slide? Yep. Well, maybe I don't. Okay, teacher hiring. A lot of discussion about that. Obviously, human resources are our personnel are our most valuable resource, and so we look at how this affects this budget. And of course, the majority of our budget is teachers, and it's since 2011, the cost for teachers has remained about 57% of what we our district budget. So no matter what our revenue is, we look at what the teachers cost. So if you look at the left column, we continue to pay more for teachers, okay? And you'd say total comp for Grand Ledge Public Schools teachers, that's where we're at now. So this year, we don't have a number there, but we're working on it. You can see where it's went up each year from 2011-12. Every year it goes up as far as the number of teachers. And you look in the center column, how many teachers have we had? Well, it's been everything 273, 271, 275. And new hires. Now, so let me talk about the new hires first. And the next column here is new hires, 10, 23, 6. And then to the side of that, when I talked about before separating the shared partnership teachers, when we added the FTE, and we got the FTE, the shared partnership teachers are on a different pay scale, but that's that's not part of what you see in the left-hand scale, okay? That's not that. So those 5 shared partnership teachers were hired to get the program started. Then we added a couple more. Some left. We have, we hired 5 more. Those are not part of that column on the left. And then this year, I ended up hiring 8 because, again, we added computers, we added Spanish, and we added more music. So that's the reason for that. And, of course, Eaton County Youth Facility is included in those numbers. Now, this past year, we hired 21 teachers. And I put a note there, an asterisk there, and it says, you know, what's happened with Grand Ledge, because we have such good reputation, we have a lot of people that apply to come to work here who have experience. Some have 15 years, some have 17 years. Some teachers have been laid off from other districts. Whatever, they come here and they're our best candidate. So to get the best candidate to come to work here, I don't start them at step 1. So oftentimes, when we hire new teachers, we start at step 1, and that extra revenue from replacing a teacher, you look at that amount, and that helps roll into providing more money, and yet for teachers, and yet that's not always what I can do now, because especially secondary teachers, the pool is getting thinner. I still have a lot of elementary teacher applicants, and I have especially a large number of specials teachers, because if I look down here, talk to many specials teachers, and what has happened with a lot of districts, I've got a PE teacher from East Lansing that was laid off because they cut their specials PE in elementary. I have a music teacher from Charlotte because they reduced the music in elementary. I have a couple art teachers from Lansing because they eliminated art at the elementary. So we have no intention of eliminating specials for our elementary buildings. That provides, we know that's a huge value for physical education, art, and music, and you know, it just gives, it's just phenomenal. So we have no intention of doing that. So we're getting a lot of people with a lot of experience coming here, which is nice, to teach and fill in those positions. Out of that 2016, it says currently working out to replace 8 retirees. One of our retirees was an art teacher, and I just looked today, I have 14 applicants for her position, and it doesn't close for another 2 weeks. So going to have lots of choices, I think, to fill her position alone. And again, we'll do our best to get the best. And with this process, this is kind of nice because we already know there's 8 retirees. We plan to replace each one of them, so it's nice to get that going. We'll have them in place, actually have them hired before we leave for the summer break. Administrative costs. We talked about this a little bit already, didn't we? Okay. So again, you see that, again, we didn't take last, but we reduced positions. Next one. Teacher assistant costs, we talked about this one already. What happened? I must have skipped one, huh? Projected fund balance. We already talked about this. Again, I talked about the highlighting that. We talked about that. Everybody thinks, you know, wow, $1 million is a ton of money. Grand Ledge Public Schools, if you find $1 million is a ton of money. Well, to you and I, it's a ton of money, okay? And yet, when you look at a $46 million budget, it's not a ton of money. We talked about the difference between February of 2015, when Sonia says to me, says, we're in trouble, we're going to get to 5%, and we start taking a lot of action. I'm thinking, we got to save enough to make one payroll. If we can save enough to make one payroll, that's one less. That's enough. That's going to bump us up a couple percents, okay? Because one payroll is like 2% of our budget, 2.5% of our budget. So it depends on the payroll, and of course, I'd like to have saved enough for the expensive payrolls, which are usually at the end of a trimester, because then we pay for Schedule B, teachers teaching under planning time. So that's why you see some differences there. But let's face it, a payroll is $3 million a month. And so that's what we're looking at. And that's a personnel cost. That has nothing to do with heating these buildings or turning the lights on. So in summary, HR is constantly evolving. I have people retire. I have people resign every day. Not every day, but a lot. I mean, at some level. It could be food service. It could be a custodian. It could be a teacher. It could be an administrator. Norma, and you know what? You know, it's just it's constantly moving, and so you're trying to make the best decisions with projections that you have. And when we look at projections, state funding. You know, I always hear about it's going to be this, then I hear, no, it's going to be this, then it's going to be this, and then we just hope it's something more and not something less. Student count. You know, we're always talking about student count, always. And, you know, the money that we spend just on personnel to track student count is phenomenal because it has to be so accurate and it's reported so many different ways. And Deanne Gullub gives us a weekly update, and then in summertime, we're looking at that all the time. We're trying to figure out, okay, what happens here? Because if we have too many students in one section, one grade level, and we have to add a section, that means adding a teacher. Well, if you add a teacher, you know what the cost of that means, and yet you only got maybe one teacher that puts you over. Like, I'm giving bad numbers. 90 kids or 91 kids in a third grade classroom at a building that has 3 sections. You can't have 91. You know, we don't want that. So now you have to figure out, okay, well, do we hire a new teacher, reduce the number of sections? Those are big costs. And how does that affect it in the long run? Retirement costs, no control over. They just keep telling us what it's going to be. Collective bargaining agreements. I would really like to get to a position where we have all our collective bargaining agreements for about 3 or 4 years, because then we could really plan. But yet I understand why we don't get them for long periods of time, because there's going to be some changes, and no one knows what those changes are. Now, I'm hoping that we can hold on and just not continue to be cut financially, because it's getting more and more difficult with these collective bargaining agreements to say, you know, we're going to try and continue to take care of you. Our philosophy is, look, we want to pay you more, but here's where we're at. So what kind of concessions do we get? So that's, again, those are long discussions. FMLA, employee retirement resignations. One advantage to allowing our staff to take up to a year's leave of absence, and that is about every bargaining unit, you know, all 7 of them, is that if they decide to have continue their family or stay home with their family for a year or part of a year, they normally don't have enough sick time, so we are hiring a sub at a lesser rate than what we're hiring the person that was doing the job. It's not great, because we want the person that's here that we hired to do the job, and yet it's an advantage to them to be off. So sometimes we end up a little better shape because financially we have FMLA. Depends if one year we had like 20 babies, so it just was, you know, we ended up with more money at the end of the year than what we thought, or we spent less than what we thought we were going to because of the number of babies. So
Did Stand Spread count those 20 babies into our projection?
I hope so for 5 years down the road. 5 years down the road, John, yes. Substitute costs. You know, we spend $500,000–600,000 a year on substitutes, except like last year we didn't spend quite as much. It's not because we didn't need them, it's because we couldn't find them. So we changed, and we went from PSG to EduStaff, trying to do better, getting subs. It's difficult to get subs because everybody has job openings. The factory north of town, every retail place. GM is hiring back. They actually took a few of our people, General Motors, which I don't blame the people for going there. You know, just again, so right now our substitute cost is it's more difficult finding the subs, the people who do it. Energy use costs, bus fuel, natural gas, electricity, water. We budget for each of these at a rate that we have once spent before. We always hope that gas goes down, natural gas goes down, but we don't know that. Tom Soul is going to give you a report later tonight and talk about the energy savings that we have based on usage, and that we're doing things more energy efficient. For example, when we replace a light bulb, we put a light bulb in that's much higher energy efficient. And we put one in that we will get a rebate back from consumers for using that lower cost light bulb. That's just a small example, but you know, if you do a whole gymnasium or whatever, it saves you a lot of money. So that's what we're looking at there. Bus fuel, natural gas, fortunately we lock those things in at a contracted rate, so it won't go above it. If the rate goes below it, they also give it, they let us, we only have to pay the lower rate, we don't have to pay the upper rate. So we're always working to try and figure out how to save, you know, let's say just $1 million in those energy costs to keep our buildings open. So even though everything's changing every day, that's the challenge that makes it fun, part of my job fun. And yet the constant is that we're going to walk this tightrope for a while as long as state funding stays the way it is, and we are at that 5 to 8% fund balance. So let's keep things in perspective, and I'll keep trying to do the best we can at these percentages. Again, total spent on employees, 86.6, but again, if you're looking at our budget, that's 40 million. Just think of it that way. It's kind of how I like to think of it. 57% is on teachers, 5.7% is on administrators, and then you got 5% on teacher assistants. So we put the majority of our resources in the classroom in educating our students.
Can I just make one comment here, because I guess I can't resist? But I keep on my iPad here a copy of the audit from the transparency report on the front page of the schools, and the page 14 of the audit does give the same numbers you gave on some of this, but they go back 10 years to the 2005, 2006 fiscal year or school year, and our student count then was 5,381, and as of last year it was 5,096, which is a decrease of 285 students. And with that decrease, that takes the foundation grant with them. And in that same period, our foundation grant went from $6,990 per student back in 2005. It's now at $7,126 in 14, which is a $136 increase over 10 years. But in that period, we lost 285 students. So there's a reason that that there's a lot of budget pressure, because the state doesn't look at us like a classroom. They look at us per student, and that's fine if you get exactly the right number of students to close a classroom, or just the exact right number to open a classroom. But otherwise, you have to spread that out. You don't lose a child in each, all in one grade. You lose them across the whole spectrum. So anyway, but it's interesting to see that kind of a history and that kind of a funding mechanism for this, for the state to do it on a per pupil basis. So anyway, over that same, over the last 10 years, we've lost 285 kids, and our grant has only gone up $136 per student. And some of those years, it went down as more than $400 a student. So some of this is just recovering from the years when we had executive budget cuts in the middle of the year that we had to absorb. But I really enjoyed your presentation.
Well,
It makes me cranky, but I enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yes. I don't want to make you cranky.
No, no one does.
Huh?
Andy, when you're talking about state funding, it's worth noting that like subcommittees are reporting budgets this week. Full appropriations will start releasing their budgets. We'll start releasing like the Senate budget and the House budget, I think 2 weeks after that. And then they'll be voted, swapped, and gone to conference committee. And they hope to be done once again by June, but you never really know. But that is their goal, is mid-June to be done with the budget.
The sooner the better. It helps us make better decisions. So.
Well, I mean, you'll look out. It's a campaign year. They'd
I-
like to get out of town
I-
quickly.
Is there a
That's
lot of
usually turns out to be a good thing for us, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of fluctuation between the groups who are discussing the foundation?
No, the governor's been pretty locked in on making sure that the other expenses that popped up don't affect the school aid fund,
Including Detroit?
including Detroit and Flint.
And Flint Rotter?
Hey, while we're on that, what about the millage, the replacement for House Bill or Senate Bill 571, millage that restricted townships and counties and schools and cities from being able, and libraries, from being able to talk about their millages? There was supposed to be a fix, but that hasn't gone through yet, right?
No, I think they're thinking about changing tack on that and trying to figure out what to do, because I think the court decision changed things, but a lot of members are still getting a lot of support for just the straight out repeal of at least that section.
I know the
So
Michigan
think that's what
Go ahead.
I think that's what we should be also encouraging, is just a repeal of that section.
Yeah, I talked to the executive director of the Michigan Association of Counties last Thursday, and he said they're going to their legislators and saying they want it entirely repealed. So I hope that's where we go.
Well, while Mr. George is still standing there, does anybody have any other questions for him?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
Andy.
thank you, Andy. All right, we've come to the part of our agenda where we invite public comment on non-agenda items. So, Mr. Bennett, if you'd read the guidelines.
When addressing the board, please come to the podium, introduce yourself. You will be allowed up to 3 minutes. Out of respect for board members, students, and staff, you will be interrupted if you personally attack a board member or district employee on issues unrelated to their job performance, mention a student's name when discussing behavior or other incidents, engage in discussion with other members of the audience. I will remind you when you are approaching the 3-minute limit. The board will not respond to questions or comments during public comment. However, the superintendent will do his best to answer questions at the end of the meeting. If immediate answers are not available, arrangements will be made to provide you with the information requested.
Thank you. All right.
Hello, Erica Ledesma, 732 Lincoln Court, Lansing, Michigan. My son Dennis attends 4th grade at Willow Ridge Elementary. Last board meeting, I spoke from a speech that I worked weeks on, and tonight I'm just going to speak from my heart. Today I've thought about what I was going to say, and I really just wanted to tell my son's story and how teacher's assistance has really affected his education, so you can just hear a personal story of the importance of them. The first 3 years of my son's life was spent with his biological mother. In those 3 years, he was given medicine that he shouldn't have been given. He was neglected. When we got custody of him, he spoke 5 words at the age of 3. So he has struggled in his elementary school career. The last district, he was looked at like a problem child, not Grand Ledge District. He was nothing but a problem child every day, reports coming home. When he moved to Grand Ledge and Willow Ridge specifically, and their institution of the PBIS system really changed his outlook on life. He started thinking of himself as a good person. I spoke to you about that last time. But those teachers' assistants are very much needed at the elementary level, not only so that kids with impulse control like my son can have the special attention they need, but also for the teachers to have support to pay attention to all the other children that aren't struggling with impulse control. I've seen from our experience that teachers have spent a lot of time controlling Dennis and his impulse control and not being able to focus on the class learnings that the other kids should be getting. So I feel that they're just so important on not only his personal level of needing that extra help, but also the teachers needing the help in supporting them so that they can continue their teachings. Help of that has helped his DIBEL scores go from a range of 22% upwards now to 85%. And that is a direct result of the special attention he is allowed to get and that PBIS system that everyone at the school spends so much time instituting. So I just wanted to relay that to you guys. I've heard from multiple people, thank you, Jay, you know, what would happen if teachers' assistants weren't there, and my son would have suffered greatly, and I truly believe it would have been another 5-6 years of struggling and tears and so on without that special attention. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacy Austin, and I reside at 3835 Glade Way in DeWitt, Michigan. Currently, I'm a second grade teacher at Willow Ridge Elementary School, and I'm coming to you with concern about the increase in class sizes. As I look back 16 years ago when I first started teaching, my class size was 21 students. My passion to teach, inspire, and facilitate student growth seemed endless. As the years have gone on, it seems the number of students that I am held accountable to teach has climbed to an unreasonable amount. We've went from the mentioned 21 to 24 to 27. That was with aid support, so I was still allowed time for individual and differentiated instruction, and now we're at 30 and 31. One self, more expectations, more children, and now less support. This is the third year in a row than I've been at 30 or more children in my classroom. This is not to mention also how the dynamics have changed in my classroom. Currently, I have 7 high needs children, and when I say high needs, what I'm meaning is emotional, behavior, academic, or sometimes both or all. Of the 7, 4 of my high needs children, severely high needs children, were added into my classroom without less than a week left before school started. And this actually was to add to the max of large number that is allowed by Grand Ledge Public Schools to hit 30 and 31. I'm not really sure how one expects to provide an effective and safe environment when you have 30 plus students ranging from the age of 6 to 8 years old. From a parent's perspective, my eyes have really been opened this year because I also have a child in the same grade that I teach. She's attending DeWitt Public Schools. Her class size, 24. Last year she was at 29 in first grade. As reported during her open house this year, the decision to add another section was decided due to the growing number of behavior problems and academic concerns by parents and teachers similar to what we're expressing to you. Being in a smaller class size, I've noticed has helped my child receive the academic opportunities that she deserved. So here I am, a parent and a teacher. My question is simple. Why do we have these enormous class sizes in Grand Ledge Public Schools? My job is my passion, and I love teaching, but I just wish that I could provide my own education that my child is receiving in DeWitt with my students in Grand Ledge. My students are like my own children. They deserve better. Class size does matter. Thank you.
Hi, my name's John Ellsworth. I live at 316 Harrison Street. Oh, the luxury, Andy, to have the time you had. Wow, I would love that. We have a good reputation here in Grand Ledge, and I value that immensely. And I think it is important that we work to maintain that, but let's not confuse a good reputation with providing a good quality education for the kids of Grand Ledge. As that erodes, which is the direction that your board and your administration have started us on, as that erodes, the reputation will go with it. In fact, we've been covering for it for quite a while now. Very positively, very forcefully. We do great stuff here in Grand Ledge. We detailed that for you at 2 different public comments where teacher after teacher from all 3 levels came and spoke to you about the wonderful things we do. But that reputation will not remain with the current trajectory that you have put us on. One constant was the stagnant state funding. Gosh, I don't share that vision, and I wish leadership would move and act to change that. I've made some of the board members aware. Senator Rick Jones has a joint resolution D that would look to equalize per pupil funding, and that would benefit Grand Ledge. Representative Tom Barrett has a House Joint Resolution F that would do the same. You all should pass a resolution in support of that and start communicating with other boards that would clearly benefit from that. The vast majority of students in Michigan would benefit from equalizing per pupil funding. Let's be advocates, let's not be complainers. Also, one other stone that we could examine would be the regional enhancement millage. And I was told that that was tried in the past and it was a disaster. I'd love to take a look at those numbers. I know we have a new direction, we have some new energy at the county level. That's something else that we should be looking at if we wish to be leaders and maintain our good reputation. And again, that reputation rests on the quality of education. The teacher contract is not about taking care of us as teachers. That's part of it, but that's not the only part. The teacher contract outlines the learning conditions that we provide here in Grand Ledge. I take that part of a teacher contract seriously. I think that is an important part of it, and it's not just about taking care of us. Teachers don't go into this line of business, and we don't stay here in Grand Ledge because of the giant pay. We don't get pay raises, and we haven't for some time. We do it because of our dedication and our commitment to excellence, which you espouse as our community's commitment. You need to live up to that commitment. You need to honor the contract and intent of the contract, and you need to make sure that that reputation can maintain based on an actual solid foundation of providing a quality education.
All right, well. Oh, there is another comment. All right.
I love my teachers, and I think they should have a raise.
All right.
At Beagle, I want my teachers to stay because I love them all, and I think they deserve more money for the children, and it's not fair to not have enough money to, like, you know how your teacher loves you as like one of your own child, so they should be able to treat you as your own child. That's why I think they should have a money raise.
Okay. Not seeing anyone else making a move to the podium, we'll move on to our next action item, which is the approval of the payment of sinking fund invoices.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of sinking fund invoices in the amount of $3,926.66 as presented.
Support.
Thank you.
Is there some information you want to share about this item?
Sure. We're looking at two things. One is the rec room for the community recreation program that we brought in. That's a small amount of it. The other one is the pool has a major issue with the air conditioner. We've been talking about this for probably about 6 months now. It's going to cost close to $500,000 to fix. We continue to look for other solutions or other options. But those all similarly cost money or more money. So this is the dollar amount that both GMB Architects and Clark Construction have been looking for other solutions that maybe not would cost us $500,000.
This was discussed at the board committee.
It is, and
earlier.
recommended for approval.
All right, thank you.
And I would request that the board allow me to abstain from the vote. The state law now prohibits a board member from voting where there's a family member involved, and I have 2 brothers and multiple nephews who are principals in Clark Construction.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of payment of the sinking fund invoices, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Our next item is a presentation and discussion item around 2 specific topics. The first one is energy conservation efforts underway in the district, and Tom Soul, I believe, is going to give that presentation.
Good evening, Superintendent Metcalf, board members, cabinet. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to update you on our energy conservation program. We're about 3 years into it now, and I've got a few slides that will hopefully tell you how we're doing. This is our program through December of 2015, 35 months. We use secondary sources for our electricity and our gas to save money, and so that means we're about a month or so behind by the time we get the invoices for them. So we tried to get as close as we could to the 3 years.
Tom, is that what is generally referred to as a cooperative for electric and gas?
Yes.
Okay.
MESIC is for the electric, and we use reliable energy for the gas. And hopefully this will continue. I know that the legislature is looking into changing those things through pressure from the energy companies to maybe limit or eliminate things that we've saved millions of dollars on. In 35 months, we've saved over $700,000. Again, this is a cost avoidance, okay? This is the value of the energy we did not use. Okay, so it's about 20% of the energy that we do use. This is adjusted for temperature. Of course, we had a pretty mild winter this year, and they adjust for that. It's used our base year, which was 2012, and it's adjusted for temperature and other conditions. If we were to open up another wing in one of the schools, then of course we'd have to heat more, so it would go up. But what they do is it's through AccuWeather. It's in State College, Pennsylvania, something that Penn State's put together. They give each day a heating or cooling day. So at 70, there's no heating or cooling. At 50, it might be one heating day. At 40, it might be two. By the time you get to minus 20, like we see around here sometimes, they count it for like 5 heating days. And so depending on the month, where in 2012 we may have needed $100,000 to run our heating and our heating, and this year we only needed $80,000. They would base it off that lower number, so the savings. As I said, this is 35 months. We have gotten the other month in. That brings us up to about $738,340. This will tell you a little bit about how they do this. It talks about our expected energy cost, the actual cost, what we paid, the special savings. This is some capacitors that we got consumers to put into Wacusta, which saves us about $1,000 4 months out of the year for a special charge that they give if you don't use all the energy they send. And I called and asked them about them, and they came out and fixed it, no charge. This doesn't reflect the thousands of dollars of rebates that we've gotten back from consumers and others. So our expected energy costs is the amount the organization would have spent on energy without the program. It's a base year, which I said was 2012. It's usage adjusted for changes in weather, energy loads, and prices. The actual energy costs for electricity, water, sewer, and gas as a result of the energy program. And the program savings. It's program implementation resulting in behavioral changes, getting people to turn lights off, close their blinds, synergistic training and reduction in equipment run times. And some of the reasons for our success is the teamwork. All of the team works. I work very closely with maintenance and custodial. We do data analysis. We've had on-site training. We diagnose comfort issues so we can resolve problems so that everybody's at a comfortable temperature. The benefits, the budget, the dollars are retained for educational purposes. So again, this isn't a check that we're getting from anybody, but it's $700,000 we did not have to spend on gas, electricity, and water and sewer. It's also great as a conservation of natural resources. Can we go to the next slide, Kim? And this is what that means. In our 3 years, we've had a huge energy reduction. We've reduced over 4 1,808 metric tons of carbon dioxide. That's like planting over 120,000 trees for 10 years or taking 1,000 cars off the road. And it's thanks to you. You were the ones, under the direction of the superintendent, that implemented this. Our maintenance staff, for executing the changes in the heating and cooling systems, John Piper and his crew, they help me all the time. I was in this building, actually it was this morning, about 12:30, to make sure that everything was going to be up and ready for our classes after having them shut down for 9 days. The custodians, Wayne Pratt and his group, are very helpful. We work together, especially in the summers when they have to clean carpets. We will shut our air handlers down and allow them to physically turn them on room by room as they clean carpets, rather than having to leave the whole building on. It's a huge saving for us in the summer. And the principals and staff for coordinating our efforts in the school. I've met with the teacher groups in the different buildings, made sure that if they have any questions or any problems, I'm the complaint department, so they come to me, and I can get with John and Wayne, and we can figure out what's the matter. Life of an energy specialist. I go out doing unoccupied and occupied audits. This week was very busy for me. We close the buildings down. I have to make sure they don't freeze. Have to make sure the lights don't come on. We use a Medisys system, which is an electronic controlling system for some of our units. It does only work in our buildings, so when there's this much snow, I have to trudge over here to this building and get in here so that I can use it. But that's okay. That keeps it secure. And that's one of the reasons why I was here bright and early this morning. We've had over 100 visits from engineers and consultants with Synergistic to help look through our buildings to pinpoint ways to save. We match conditioning time with occupied times, make sure that our buildings aren't on when they're not, when there's nobody in them. I communicate with teachers and staff. We send out emails when we have breaks to make sure teachers know to shut things off. And that helps to promote an energy conservation culture. And we continually assess the program. The future of our energy program, we work with our energy suppliers and government agencies to try to keep our energy costs low. Talk about losing our secondary energy sources. That's a big thing. We work with the government agencies for that. We work with the city to try to keep our water rates down. Investigate and implement new cost-saving programs. Andy mentioned some of the lighting. Just this past month, in addition to changing the lighting in our bays at the bus garage, and it was the Hayes gym. We just changed 6 lights in the high school. In the small hallway between the Algar room and the weight room. Went from 6 metal halide 525 watt lights to 42 watt LEDs. Same light. It cost us, this came out of John's maintenance budget, $1,570 for these 6 lights. Got a rebate for $911 from consumers. That 500 bucks we'll save in a year. Replacement on these LEDs would probably be a decade, whereas the bulbs on the other ones. Not to mention, we've reduced a fire hazard. The kids like to throw their French fry cups up into the light. The halide ones got very warm. These LEDs, they'll never, ever cause a problem. Just want to say that we're going to continue to standardize procedures so we can resolve comfort issues. 'Cause that's what's going to help student learning, help staff productivity, boost morale. There's lots of other things that we could do. Just this break made me think again that it would be very nice if there was a way that we could combine our buildings during breaks, so we only have to have one on. There's lots of other things that we're going to work on to see if we can save money in the future. We are getting better. The first year, we saved under 15%. This past year, we saved 29%. So we're getting better every year. Any questions?
So, well, you just answered my question. I was wondering, intuitively, I was thinking that our savings would be bigger at the front end when we made a lot of changes and then start tapering off.
Well, that first year was kind of tough. We had some changes in personnel. So once we got everybody on board, John Piper, Andy George, and we had gone through and figured out what some of the problems are, we still have some very low-cost fixes or no-cost fixes that we can do. Some of our buildings have some big problems. There's a couple of them that still use pneumatic controls to run the systems, which is sending air to these things to turn on and off. You get holes in there, and they don't turn off like they're supposed to. But that's a very expensive fix. But hopefully, as we save more money, maybe we can look into that. But for right now, it seems to be working very well.
But the savings do continue to grow. They aren't tapering off.
No,
Keep
not
finding new
like I said.
efficiencies.
This isn't on there, but this is our chart every month. Keeps going up and up. Now that's, again, this is, additional. But as I said, first year was 11%. Last year was 29%. I think we know what we're doing, and we're tightening things up better every year.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, thank you. All right, our next discussion item and presentation is related to Section 105, 105C, Schools of Choice. So, always an interesting discussion every year.
It is, and you have a couple sheets in front of you. One is the history of students, specifically K-6, from 2009 to present. And we've also kind of rolled forward what we believe to be next year's numbers. I've also provided on the second sheet is kind of the roll forward, looking at the number of sections, number of students that we're currently projecting. Of course, these are pretty rough numbers because you never know how many students are going to move out of the district. You don't know how many students are going to move out of the district and request schools of choice to stay. And you certainly don't know how many students are going to move into the district. But at least it gives us kind of the roll forward of the current numbers that we have.
These are average?
You're seeing with the history, what we did is we looked at the number per section, and we went with the highest number. So if we had 3 sections and you ended up with an average of 27.8, we looked at it and said, well, that's 28 in a classroom. So we rounded every section up, because if you have 27.8, you don't have 27.8 kids. One of those classrooms has at least 28. So we looked at it and said, let's make sure we round up to be the worst case scenario. What was fascinating is looking at 2009 data. If you look at Neff, Holbrook, and Greenwood in 2009, we had sections of first grade at Neff with 28 students in a class. At the same time, you had Greenwood with 20 students in the first grade classroom. So the numbers were very, very different, even with buildings as close as Neff and Greenwood. If you go down through, there are a number of those. Second grade in 2009, Neff had 28 students in a second grade classroom. At the same time, Holbrook had 18 students. That's a 10-student difference. And again, these buildings are within a couple miles. If you look at fifth grade at Neff, they had 31 students in a fifth grade classroom in 2009. And at Greenwood, fifth grade 2009, they had 21 students. So the balance of the students across the district doesn't appear to be very sound at that point. I think one of the things that we realize as we look at this and we see the average student class size, in 2009 it was 23.9, 2015 it's 25.6. But I think as you look at Beagle, Delta Center, Wacusta, Willow Ridge, you're seeing much more stability across those, or more, maybe a better balanced classroom. We do have classrooms that are too large in regards to numbers. Some of those are very challenging to deal with because, again, you don't know when that person's going to move in next week or the week after or the week after that. We would prefer to keep these class sizes somewhere around that 26, 27 range. We do have a couple sections that have grown to 29 to 30. That is not our preference. In some of those, such as Willow Ridge, it's very challenging because we do not have an additional classroom. When we're looking at Beagle and Wacusta next year, we have additional classrooms that we could take a class where we had 30, 30, 30 and add another section to that and have smaller class size. That's been a challenge at Willow Ridge for several years. That's why Willow Ridge was proposed on the bond to add classrooms so that we had some flexibility. Delta Center, likewise, is in a similar state. They have 4 sections at each grade level. Depending on the grade level, you have 24 students in a grade at 6th grade, and yet you could have 29 students in the 2nd or 3rd grade classroom. It really depends on who lives in that area and how many we've accepted. As we look at next year's school of choice, my recommendation is that we do what we've done in the past, with the exception that I think we're going to direct a lot more students towards Beagle and Wacusta, just because Willow Ridge and Delta Center at this point in time do not have the capacity to do that. Questions?
How many school of choice students do we have right now? That'll come back.
Well, if you look down below at the bottom left, that front
Okay.
one, we've got 3-year school of choice numbers. These students are students that are either your school of choice this year, they were our students the year before, moved away and requested to remain school of choice, or they were tuition students. So that number varies. We are right around the 10% as a total for the district, right around 500 students, K-12. Additionally, as we look at next year's elementary numbers, K-6, we will have to have at least 53 students move in or be accepted through school of choice just to maintain the current student count. I don't anticipate that's going to be an issue because when you look at kindergarten, we normally have somewhere in that neighborhood of 40 to 50 between now and the fall. Questions?
So will we, in the past, we've accepted school of choice students for high school only in 9th grade so that they can matriculate through the whole 4 years. Is that going to?
That is still the recommendation. We do accept tuition students potentially in 10th, 11th, and 12th, but it is on a case-by-case basis. High school administration has basically the say-so when it comes to accepting those students. This is not an action item tonight, so you'll be able to study this information over the next couple of weeks, and we'll have it back on April 25th for direction.
Anybody have any questions?
yeah, I'd like time to study it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Over the next month?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All righty.
Brian, when we come back in 2 weeks, can you make sure that we have how many teachers we'd need to hire to get to like 25 across the board? Like how many additional?
How many,
How many
exact-
additional full-time
Sure.
things?
Well, and how many classrooms do you need to add?
How many educators and how many classrooms we'd need to get to 25?
To get to 25 in a class.
Right.
As an absolute maximum, not as an average.
Yeah. Like, thanks.
We're already on an average. Okay. All right, we have one more opportunity for public comment, if anybody would like to address the board.
We don't control that.
We don't control it.
We can talk into them closer.
Lean into
Louder.
them a little more.
Yes, I asked if Brian could prepare the numbers for the next board meeting of how many full-time teachers we would need to hire and how many physical classrooms it would take to get to a maximum class size of 25. No problem.
You should hear.
You're here to hear, so it helps.
You know, by the way,
You seem very far away tonight, I gotta tell you.
yeah,
I feel like,
I think
someone-
you can maybe angle that up.
go ahead.
One of the, when we did do the reconfiguration of the buildings, I don't know now, 6 years, 7 years ago? It's been a while. One of the benefits of that, or the hoped-for benefit, was that we were very aware that there were several schools in the district with extremely small numbers, and there were other ones that had high numbers, and it seemed inequitable, and that by combining reconfiguring the schools where we were able to reduce the number of schools and save some money to balance our budget, we were also able to say that we had more kids, more homogeneous groups in a building so that you could match them for reading groups and math groups and other things. There were lots of reasons to do that were academically motivated. But one of them was that frustration that we had some very small schools that weren't very efficient. And while that might have been nice for some people who were in it, it was causing a bad differential between all the classrooms. So anyway, I would look forward to looking at the numbers some more.
I'm not seeing anyone moving toward public comment. We'll move on to comments from staff and board, and we'll start with staff.
Just want to tell Tom Sowell is still here. Appreciate all the work he does. I know it's not always a pleasant job, but he works hard at it and does a good job. Thank you.
No comments.
Okay. All right, well, oh, you do have a comment. Sorry, okay.
Uh,
Jump in.
As I mentioned earlier, it's budget season, and as you know, Mr. Ellsworth mentioned, there are ways of increasing revenue, and one of them is getting more money from the state. And it dawns on me that whenever I remind folks of this, that I leave out Representative Tom Leonard, who has Clinton County, and we do have numbers of students up there. I believe we have a whole school up there. So reach out to him as well and remind him that, especially him, because he's not as, I've never found him to be as public education minded as Senator Jones or Representative Barrett have been. And sorry,
He's in my
just
district.
I have to step out. But you know, my usual reach out, ask for more money, and proposal.
Keep knocking the doors down, yes.
Not right here, no.
All right. All right, well, future topics, we'll have a regular meeting here in this room on Monday, April 25th. Board bond advisory meeting and work session again on May 9. And now if I could have a motion to go into closed session?
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education move into closed session for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategies as per Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act, PA 267 of 119 and 76.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and this is a roll call vote.
Mrs. Clark Pearson?
Yes.
Mrs. Winstanley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulvena?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
President Wasik?
Yes. All right, thank you all for coming.